Today, let's take a look at Stuart Hall. Now, this is a Jamaican born black British cultural theorist, and he's closely associated with the CCCS, the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, which was founded at the University of Birmingham by Richard Hoggart in 1964. Richard Hoggart remained the director here, and after him, Stuart Hall became the director of CCCS. And Stuart Hall was born in Jamaica, and his father belonged to the lower middle class. His mother had been adopted, and she had aspirations. She wanted that white culture, and she was fascinated by the white and the British, and she was keen that her children should be proper British, proper English. Stuart was black, and somehow he won a scholarship and he came to Oxford, but he never felt at home here in Oxford. He could easily see that he could learn literature, he could study, he could learn, but he would always remain an outsider. He could never become a part of that circle. He would always remain the outsider. And although he studied literature and things, he could see that he was looking at literature differently from the way the other students here were looking at literature. It was as if, they had a feel of the subject in their bones, and Stuart Hall never had that thing. So he could sense that there was something different, and that he could never be a proper Englishman. Not that he aspired to it, but somehow he felt that there was a difference. Richard Hoggart invited Stuart Hall to CCCS because he was impressed with whatever Hall was doing. And Hall had his own clear views about certain things. He understood what it was to be a part of the working class, and he didn't want to disown that part of his. He was absolutely comfortable with it, and in fact, he wanted that cultural studies should be concerned not with elite culture, not with what those privileged few got in the name of, music or literature, not anything fancy. Stuart Hall believed that the lived experience, that experience which is lived, the experience which is interpreted, that is what culture is all about. Culture is about not just a way of life, not just some things or some artifacts or something. Culture is much more than all this. And Stuart Hall was, what he himself considered to be a 1956er. Now, what does that mean? The year 1956 was an important year because two major things happened, and these two major events which happened, it horrified people. The Anglo-French Israeli invasion on Egypt happened. Second, the Soviet intervention in Hungary happened. Now, because of the Soviet intervention in Hungary, it appeared as if Marxism was somehow deviating from what it was meant to be and what it was supposed to be. It was moving towards totalitarianism, and so intellectuals were disappointed and disillusioned, and so from within the Marxist circle, the new left arose, and Stuart Hall was one of those. Later on, Stuart Hall founded the journal called the New Left Review. He was the person who coined the term Thatcherism. Before Mrs. Margaret Thatcher actually came to power, Stuart Hall had already coined that term, Thatcherism, to describe the political, economic, and cultural changes which the Thatcher government would later introduce. Margaret Thatcher was somehow, she wanted to do things to influence the electorate. And so this consisted of the working class. And Stuart Hall used the term Thatcherism for those policies that she would later bring about, which she would introduce. Stuart Hall was fascinated by reception theories, how a text is received. And he was of the opinion that representation is a very, very important aspect of both cultural studies and media studies. Things are represented, and how these representations actually happen, how meanings are made, these were things that Stuart Hall was interested in looking into. If we try to understand this a little bit, we will find that there is no real fixed meaning in things outside. This was an idea which was beginning to enter post-humanism. This idea was beginning to make its appearance, that meaning does not lie in things. It is the human mind which gives meanings. And the human mind is able to give meanings because something is happening prior to this. Prior to making that meaning, something else is happening, and that something is representation. Something is represented in a particular way. The event itself is colorless, let us say. Suppose there is going to be a political meeting somewhere. There is going to be a political meeting somewhere, and some political leaders are going to get together and conduct that meeting. That is colorless. But there is a lot of information there. There is a reason why that meeting is going to be held. There is a reason why only these people are coming for the meeting. There is perhaps a chain of events which has led to that meeting. There are expectations which people have, those people who will be attending the meeting, they have their expectations. And there are going to be some consequences of this meeting. So all this is there, and when so many things are there, there cannot be one fixed meaning that you could give to this meeting. There are bound to be several meanings. So there is no one fixed meaning. If there could be one fixed meaning to things in the world, if things had only one fixed meaning, you would have a yardstick to measure other meanings. This is the yardstick, that fixed meaning. Now you can measure how far from this yardstick X meaning is, or A meaning is, or B meaning is, or C meaning is. But when there is no fixed yardstick, how do you measure? And how do you say that this meaning is correct or that meaning is correct? They are just opinions, they are meanings. And one meaning is as good as another. So you cannot claim that this meaning is right and that meaning is wrong. But what happens is that those colorless events are represented in a particular way. So what does represent really mean? You could look at represent in different ways. People represent us in government. So we have our leaders, we have elected them, they represent us. That too is represent. In this sense, represent would really mean that, okay, so we are not in that place, so instead of us, they are there. Represent could also mean to depict something, to portray something, to present something, to image something. That too is represent. But suppose we break up this word represent and we make it represent. What would that mean? Represent something means that something has already been presented and now it is being done again, maybe in a different way, in a way which is different from the original. If you look at it this way, then represent could mean that whatever has been done earlier, it is being done in a changed way now. So it could be improved or it could even be distorted. And when somebody or people in power believe in manipulation, that represent can absolutely become a distortion. And so he was interested in the way, let's say, mass media, TVs, films, advertisements, things that are portrayed through the media, how they are represented. Stuart Hall said that it is not that step 1 event, step 2 representation, step 3 meaning. He did not say that. He said representation is embedded in the event. That representation is entering the event. Side by side with the event, the representing is going on. And the making of meaning will follow this. The event, along with the representation embedded in it, is one thing. And now the way that is presented, meanings will be made. So, representation is not something that is happening on the outside, and it is not happening afterwards. It is happening simultaneously with the event. And so, there are some practices, there are some methods, there are some ways in which automatically this representation is happening along with the event. And he wanted to study those, the practices of representation interested him greatly. Stuart Hall and his reception theory. See, he came out with encoding and decoding. Television series, encoding and decoding. And Stuart Hall has not authored books like other scholars and intellectuals have done. He preferred to write essays, but those essays really went home. They made an impact. And encoding and decoding is something that Stuart Hall talks about, and it's a very, very important aspect of cultural studies. And we shall look into Stuart Hall's reception theories in the next video.